Okay, just 1 second. Is Councilor McGough-Swain on remotely? Sam,
I'm here.
sound check?
I'm here. Somehow I'm upside down on Zoom here, so you just have to forgive me. I'm not sure what's going on.
Okay, we'll just pay attention to your voice then, thanks. All right, I've got 6 o'clock. Good evening, everybody. I'll call the meeting to order of Beaumont City Council for Tuesday, November 5th, 2024, 6 p.m. here in City Council chambers. Begin all meetings with our land acknowledgement, which I'll begin now. The City of Beaumont respects the languages, histories, and cultures of all First Nations people of this land, whether it be a First Nation, Métis, or Inuit descent, and appreciate that their presence continues to enrich vibrant communities across the land. As we gather here in Treaty 6 territory and the homeland of the Métis Nation, we acknowledge that we are all treaty people and have ongoing responsibilities to protect and honor the treaty, the inherent rights of the people, and the land. Next on our agenda are proclamations. I have 3 this evening. Beginning with Family Violence Prevention Month, November, whereas there are many people in Alberta who experience family violence, and whereas the effects of family violence may be carried on from generation to generation, and whereas all Albertans have a role to play in preventing family violence, and whereas the City of Beaumont Family and Community Support Services works to prevent family violence through education and awareness. And whereas the City Beaumont Council calls upon the citizens of Beaumont to reach out, speak out against family violence, and to make a difference by creating a culture of support for those affected by family violence. And whereas the Beaumont City Council calls upon all Albertans to help make sure our province is violence-free in 2024 and beyond. Now, therefore, it be resolved that I am Mayor Bill Danlick, do hereby proclaim November 2024 as Family Violence Prevention Month in the City of Beaumont, Alberta, dated 5th of November 2024. Next proclamation is World Town Planning Day, November 8th, 2024. Whereas since the inception in 1949, World Town Planning Day is celebrated in more than 30 countries around the world. And whereas World Town Planning Day highlights the valuable contribution that sound planning makes to the quality of our communities, and whereas Beaumont's vision to be a vibrant, inclusive, livable, and sustainable community requires deliberate, wise, and strategic planning decisions. And whereas World Town Planning Day also serves as a reminder of the importance for all citizens to engage in stronger, smarter communities. And whereas the City of Beaumont recognizes the valuable contributions of urban planners in planning and development of their commitment to our community. Now, therefore, be it resolved that I, Mayor Bill Danlick, do hereby proclaim November 8th, 2024 as World Town Planning Day in the City of Beaumont, Alberta, dated 5th of November, 2024. Last proclamation is Métis Week, November 14th to 19th, 2024. Whereas Métis Week is an opportunity to commemorate the legacy of Louis Riel and recognize the sacrifice of all Métis people who continue to strive towards rights and recognition as a distinct nation. And whereas the City of Beaumont recognizes the important role that Métis people have played in the community and the contributions they continue to make to the city. And whereas Beaumont's vision to be a vibrant, inclusive, diverse, livable, and sustainable community requires the community to commit to a strong relationship with Métis people and communities across the province. Now, therefore, be it resolved that I, Mayor Bill Danlick, do hereby proclaim November 14th to 19th, 2024 as Métis Week in the City of Beaumont, Alberta, dated 5th of November, 2024. Give me 1 second. Next on our agenda, adoption of the agenda. Madam Clerk, do you have any changes in the agenda this evening? Let me just find your microphone there. I can't see which one you want.
I have it here, Mayor. Thank you.
You have it, thank you.
Administration does have one amendment to the agenda. I'll just pop it up on the screen here.
Thank you.
So agenda be amended by removing item 10.2 CAO evaluation and deferring the item to the November 12th, 2024 regular council meeting.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Before we go any further, I should mention Councillor McCook is on vacation this week, and Councillor McGough-Swain is on a business meeting elsewhere, but he's able to join us by Zoom as long as he can this evening. So Sam is on remotely and upside down in his picture apparently, but that's a good one. That's the first one for that happening. So, any discussion on the motion for the adopted agenda? Seeing none, Council, I'll ask you to vote on the agenda. Councillor McGough-Swain, how do you vote?
In favor, and I
Thank
fixed
you,
my
Council.
beer.
That carries 6-0 in favor of the amended agenda. Madam Clerk, any open forum guests this evening?
Thank you, Mayor. We do have one open forum registered this evening, Pat Matsuko. Sorry if I said that incorrectly. If you'd like to go up to the front for your presentation.
Thank you. Welcome to council.
Thank you.
You have 5 minutes to present and then questions from council. So when you're ready, please state your name for the record and begin when you're ready, please.
I have one question. Who controls the slides?
I believe
You have them, so.
our clerk does, our administrative clerk does. Yep.
Thank you. Good evening, Your Worship, councillors, administration, and citizens of Beaumont. Thank you for the opportunity to present tonight, and thank you for the work that you do on behalf of Beaumont. My purpose here tonight is to speak with you about the aspirations that you have stated, healthcare services that meet the need of our growing community. First off, I'd like to acknowledge that I do not represent any organization, and I speak on behalf of the health of Beaumontonians and not on behalf of them as individuals. I'm a resident of Beaumont for 21 years. I am a retired nurse. I am a policy analyst in my past life, advising ministers of health in provincial governments for 30 years. I tell you this because I think my background, when I get to my asks, which are coming at the end of my presentation, are not based on any political philosophy or conspiracy theory, as is going around tonight south of the border. I will whip through the slides very quickly because many of them you are familiar with. If we look at, please advance, okay. Can we advance a slide? Okay. If we look at the aspirations that you have stated that meet the needs of our growing community, we recognize that Beaumont is growing. Primary responsibility for healthcare is the province, but Beaumont will advocate for dependable, accessible healthcare that is available when we need. Next. If we look at the objectives, you all know what they are yours. I want to know, how are we doing? Next slide. If we look at the community needs assessment, which you commissioned, it identified gaps and it identified future needs for our growing community. Next. If we look at the Health Services Action Plan, which is based on the community needs assessment, we see, and I take a little bit of umbrage with the first one that says, the Health Services Action Plan represents next steps, which is the feasibility assessment. And I know studies have to be done, but when we are looking at individuals who are waiting to be seen by a primary care physician, the last thing we need is delays. Next slide. The assessment looked at gaps in service, and I want to focus you on item number 4, acknowledging the 3 before, but specifically looking at primary care physicians and clinics with capacity to see new patients. The key here is new patients. Next. The actions have been identified, and I want to focus you on the 3 at the bottom, where you made commitment to do these 3 things. I would look forward to us in Beaumont hearing an update on these. I would like to comment on item number 2, which is exploring the potential barriers to utilizing team-based care at the PCN. I think that responsibility lies with the funder and the PCN itself. Next slide. If we look at attracting additional primary care services, accepting that and recognizing that as a long-term vision for Beaumont. Next. Encouraging family physicians and nurse practitioners to make their home, or at least their place of work, I think is key to addressing healthcare needs in Beaumont. Next. Incentivizing community to meet the needs that we have, not general services, is a support that I think we need as well. Next. Now, municipal engagement. There are many opportunities for municipalities to engage in consultation with other municipalities. I encourage this, and I have lists of people who are waiting to talk to representatives of our municipal government about the endeavors that they have undertaken. I caution that continuing engagement with Alberta Health and Alberta Health Services will be a life's career, and I will talk to that a little bit later. Next. The current environment, we definitely have a shortage of family physicians in Beaumont, and we have lost 4 in the last while. Alberta Health is restructuring, and we tend to have a wait-and-see attitude. Wait for the plan. I ask why. We know that there are restructuring that's happening, and there are a finite number of people that will be doing the work. I think the definition and proclamation of the municipal role is important in meeting these needs, but I think we have an opportunity to capitalize on an opportunity. Next. That opportunity is providing nurse practitioners to act as primary caregivers. They are regulated by CARNA. They have an enhanced scope of practice, which I think you have. They have specialty training and can meet the needs or fill the gaps in our community. They carry their own panel of patients and are able to bill the government accordingly. They therefore are caring for new and unpaneled or unattached patients, which is what we need. And they have a built-in mechanism to pay for overhead in a clinic that they are located in. They currently are located in both PCNs throughout the province and in private clinic, all with provincial government organization and fiscal support. Next. What am I asking? I'm asking you to walk the talk. If, in fact, improving access to primary care is your primary goal, then I ask you to walk your talk. Make it one of your priorities although having to recognize that you have limited resources and you have other legislative commitments. Initiate, direct, and expedite your efforts in those last, whoops, I lost my train of thought, in those last items. Thank you. The 3 items that are there. Next. I
This is the
believe
last slide. We're at 5 minutes.
I believe the last practitioners are not the complete, that nurse practitioners are not the complete answer, but they are an available and supported, promoted solution promoted by the government. I think we do not need to wait for Alberta Health to organize and restructure. We have opportunity to develop options now. I think we can consider options whereby the capacity and capability of municipal and provincial governments can work together, and I had asked MLA Lunty to be here tonight, and I asked Council to provide and redirect resources that are required for this. Next slide. Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. I appreciate that. One of the requests was an update, so I'll be asking administration and later on after this evening or tomorrow to provide an update, the timing of the next update on our healthcare assessment and how our progress is being made. So I'll get back to you on that when I have more information. Any questions from members of council for our presenter this evening? Councillor Penrod, give me 1 second. Your mic is on.
Thank you, Mayor Daniluk, and thank you, Ms. Matusko?
Yes.
Is that right? Yes. Thank you for your presentation and your passion on this. I want to take the opportunity to congratulate you on your recent receipt of the Alberta College of Pharmacy Honorary Membership Award, because you wouldn't tell anyone that you won that.
My husband would, but yeah.
Yeah, you've got a good partner there. And I just think it speaks for me to some of what you talked about spending your career in healthcare advocacy. So I like to listen when people have a lot of experience and wisdom to share. So I noted in the other material that you shared with us ahead of the meeting around scope of practice for nurse practitioners in Alberta that their scope can be limited based on practice settings, individual practitioner competence and employer requirements. Wondered if you could comment at all on how Beaumont's size and population and or level of current services might impact the ability of a nurse practitioner to practice here.
It's a good question. Thank you for that. Yes, Beaumont, as a city, we are short the number of physicians that I think need provide care that we need. We are a young community. We are of childbearing age, and we are caregivers to our parents. The complexion is changing. Nurse practitioners have various expertise, and so the selection of a nurse practitioner would determine on the needs of the community and the healthcare provider that they would be working with. For instance, in Leduc, a physician is in the process of employing 3 nurse practitioners in his practice. He is handpicking them. He is meeting the needs of not only his patients, but patients he has yet to see. So there is work to be done to match, if you will, the nurse practitioner to the community and to the other colleagues that she would be working with. That potential does exist, and it's being done elsewhere. It's being done in Camrose, West Edmonton, and in Calgary.
Perfect. And just to clarify, what you're suggesting, as I understand it, is not that Beaumont would secure or pay these nurse practitioners, but rather work with local healthcare providers, with the PCN and with the provincial government to recruit and then have them set up here, and then they would essentially be their own.
Exactly. I think the municipal government is not in the business of employing nurse practitioners anywhere, but rather to facilitate that. The government, provincial government, has allowed funding for nurse practitioners, perhaps something like overhead in a clinic, incentive to move here. I mean, you know best what you can do. I would caution that you not only rely on the PCN to consult with nurse practitioners, because some physicians are not in favor of nurse practitioners for very different reasons. Some physicians in private practice outside of the PCN are. So there are many opportunities to have this discussion.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Seeing no further questions. Oh, Councillor Telebas, you have the floor for a quick question. Thank you.
Perfect. I don't know why it has to be quick, but I will. I'll run through it here, Mayor. Just for you, Ms. Matusko, just a quick question. Wondering if you're familiar with the new nurse practitioner primary care program that's been released recently with some incentive for some of the nurse practitioners to start their own practice, and if maybe you could speak a little bit to that and how that could potentially help with what you're describing.
I'm not your best person to speak on the program, but I know that $20 million has been allotted for this program to be, I don't want to say divvied up, but to have access by organizations who are considering hiring nurse practitioners. They are allowing nurse practitioners to bill fee-for-service. They have incorporated also overhead so that wherever the nurse practitioner goes, he or she can contribute to the overhead, which is one of the big complaints of taking on a partner in a practice. Billing fee-for-service is one thing. Paying to keep the lights on, paying for the nurse and the receptionist is another thing. The provincial government has actually set out plans and resources to do that. The physician in Leduc who is doing this is hamstrung by the government itself because they are slow to clear the red tape to get 2 of the 3 nurses that he has requested, but they're working through it. It's not a smooth process, but it is an opportunity. And I think for him, once he's cleared 1, the other 2 will come quickly.
Perfect, thank you. And I'm fortunate enough to have been exposed to this program quite a bit more on the industrial side, but it is a program where there is a cap on the amount of NPs that are eligible for the program, and basically the compensation is based on a full-time position and your panel size, and that's paid out annually. So there's a lot of opportunity, but it's also limited. My understanding and my experience as well is it's also hard to find nurse practitioners that are willing to come to a certain area and willing to perform that work, especially in their own practice or even under another physician. So just wondering if you have any numbers in terms of availability of nurse practitioners versus physicians.
I do know that there are 29 nurse practitioners who are registered with their association who are looking. I know that there is a perception among some nurse practitioners that some of our physicians in Beaumont are not in favor of them coming here. You know, that I can't speak other than to say that. I also know that there are positions where nurse practitioners and their physicians need to work out a way of practice. It's not the nurse practitioner alone in his or her clinic, but working with care providers. There has to be receptiveness among the other healthcare providers, specifically physicians.
Perfect. So just want to thank you again for your presentation and exploring options outside of the box. Thank you.
Thanks for your time.
Thanks for coming. Council, thank you for questions. Moving on with our agenda is, next item is consent agenda. Madam Clerk, put consent agenda on the screen, please. Consent agenda, motion as presented. Councillor Penrod?
I just had to wait for the ladybug to move off my button so I didn't squash it. I move that council consent to approve the items listed in the following agenda, the following agenda items without debate. Item 5.1, Organizational Council Meeting Minutes, October 22nd, 2024. And item 5.2, Special Council Meeting Minutes, October 29th, 2024.
Thank you, Councillor. Discussion on the motion? Seeing none, Council, I'll ask you to vote. Please activate the voting process. Give me 1 second. And Sam, how do you vote? Councillor Markov-Swain, sir, how do you vote?
Yep, in favor.
Thank you. Council, that carries 6-0 in favor of consent agenda motion. Thank you. The next on our agenda this evening is item 6.1 is public hearing and council consideration. -24 Dance Row Meadows Land Use Bylaw Amendment, public hearing, second and third readings. Items 6.1 and 6.2 are the same topic and both require a public hearing. We'll be doing both public hearings at the same time. Madam Clerk, would you please walk us through the public hearing process, please?
Thank you, Mayor. Welcome to the November 5th, 2024 City of Beaumont public hearings. We will be conducting 2 separate public hearings this evening. Dance Row Meadows Outline Plan Amendment non-statutory public hearing being congruently held with Bylaw 1061-24, Dance Row Meadows redistricting statutory public hearing, and then a public hearing for Bylaw 1059-24, our complete community municipal development plan amending bylaw. Public hearings are an opportunity to speak to council and advertise bylaws or certain resolutions. I'll spend a few moments providing an overview of the public hearing procedures as provided in the meeting procedures bylaw 1014-22. We've been accepting written submissions in the weeks preceding the public hearing. The deadline for written submissions was noon on November 4th, 2024. Any written submissions received by the deadline have been provided to council in advance of this hearing for the review and are also available for public inspection on the agenda page of the city's website. Registration to present at the public hearing by electronic means was required by 4 p.m. on November 4th, 2024. Registration to present in person is permitted in advance of the public hearing or at the public hearing. Currently, we do not have any registered speakers for today's public hearing. Administration will first make a presentation on the bylaw and resolution, and council will be invited to ask questions for clarification. The applicant will be given up to 10 minutes to make a presentation, and council will be invited to ask questions for clarification. Next, members of the public who are registered to speak or those who are present here will be invited to make their presentations. If anyone here has not yet registered to speak, please raise your hand and we will get your name and add you to the list of presenters. Council will first hear from those who are in favor of the proposed bylaw and or resolution and those who are opposed and anyone else who wishes to be heard. Presenters will have up to 5 minutes to present and council will have the opportunity to ask questions of clarification. When it is your turn to speak and make your presentation, please ensure your microphone or audio is working and state your full name for the record before beginning your presentation. Your 5 minutes will start when your presentation starts and you will have a timer located on the screen in front of you. Again, please remain at the microphone once you are done presenting. Council may ask you questions following your presentation. Once council has heard all the presentations, the public hearing will be closed and the regular session of council will reconvene so that council may make the decision on the matter. On a final note, the city's public hearings are recorded as a webcast, which will be made available for viewing on the city's website. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Appreciate that. So we'll be with administration this evening. Thank you. I believe Ms. Kohlenbrander? Did I get it right? Perfect, great. I'm not sure what microphone you're sitting at. Just give me a second to figure that out. Can you just hit your microphone there? It's not showing on my screen. Give me 1 second. I have it now. Your microphone is on. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Mayor, Council, Administration, and members of the public. My name is Brenda Kohlenbrander, and I am representing Long Range Planning. to present on the Dancero Meadows Outline Plan Amendment and Bylaw 1061-24, which is a bylaw to amend the land use bylaw. So this is a joint public hearing to consider and hear any feedback on both of these amendments since they are related to the same proposal. With me tonight, I have the Manager of Long Range Planning and Manager of Development Services. And we also have representatives for the applicant, Stantec Consulting, and for the developer, Anthem Properties. Stantec has prepared a brief presentation on behalf of the developer, and they will be presenting after I conclude my presentation, and they will be available to answer any questions at the end of the presentations. So with that, I will start my presentation. This evening's presentation follows my report to Council from October 8th, where Council gave first reading to Bylaw 1061-24, Dancero Meadows Land Use Bylaw Amending Bylaw. So this evening, as mentioned, we are additionally considering an amendment to the Dancero Meadows Outline Plan, which is the higher level plan for the Dancero Meadows neighborhood. And I just want to highlight that this is a non-statutory document. So it's a little bit different from like an area structure plan or a land use bylaw in that regard. So it won't require 3 readings. It will just be considered through resolution. I don't know which button it is. Oh, there. Okay, so just a quick sort of overview of what I'm going to be talking about. I'll provide an overview of these 2 applications and what's being proposed. I'll provide some brief sort of site context, although I think maybe the developer and consultant may have if needed, more to add on site context. Then I'll go over the outline plan amendment. Since this is the higher level document, this will need to be considered first. And then we'll get into the redistricting, then a sort of a policy analysis of both. Community insights and timelines will actually be covered on the same slide. So this will just be going over the circulation engagement process to date. And then finally, we'll end with administration's recommendation on these 2 items. So up on the screen here, I just wanted to provide an overview sort of side by side of these 2 applications to show the difference between these 2. So again, the outline plan is sort of a higher level document. You can see in dark blue, sort of outlined in dark blue, that is the amendment area that we're considering for the outline plan. And this is the land use concept found within the outline plan document. And to the right, just to sort of compare at the redistricting level, which is typically at the parcel level, but in this case, these areas have not yet been subdivided. But the areas shown in sort of the red dashed lines are the 2 areas that would be considered for redistricting from conventional neighborhood to integrated neighborhood. Just to provide a little bit more, I guess, on the applications themselves, we received these 2 applications in July of 2024. They were submitted by Stantec Consulting on behalf of Anthem Properties. And the rationale for these applications is to facilitate relocation of townhouse development from one part of the northern section of Dancero neighborhoods to 2 new sites. So this is to accommodate a narrower form of townhouse development than what would be allowed under the conventional neighborhood district. And just to go back to that slide, just to provide some context, so we're talking about 2 sites here for the actual redistricting level. So one on the screen, I've called it the Northwest site. So within my report, you'll see that is shown as the Northwest site. And then the second site is the Northeast site, which is labeled as 2. And you can see that some portions sort of in between these 2 sites have not yet been developed, but the area is primarily low-density residential. There's some medium-density residential that's sort of being developed in the center, sort of in the middle area there. And then to the south, you can see a portion of the stormwater management facility site. And it's located between Range Road 243, to the east of Range Road 243 and to the south of Township Road 510. So this is just a picture showing sort of what the site looks like. So this is the Northwest site. This is looking south from Township Road 510. The actual location of the proposed townhouse site would be sort of closer to the developed area you see, so further south. And this is the northeast site. So this is looking east from Dance Row Way, which is that sort of curved street that you see on the map that was shown sort of earlier. So the site, I believe, would be sort of behind the lamppost you see, and there is going to be a future road constructed that those townhouses would be fronting on, so that's not yet constructed. So in the next couple of slides, I just want to provide a little bit more detail on the outline plan amendment, which again has not been previously introduced to council. So essentially, they're proposing to relocate medium density residential in the northern portion of the neighborhood. So I'm showing on the screen here a side-by-side of the existing outline plan land use concept, so on the left, and then the proposed new land use concept is shown on the right. I've circled 3 areas in blue, so the larger blue area shows what was previously designated as, or in the existing outline plan, what is designated as medium density. And then the 2 smaller areas show where that change is happening, so where the medium density would be redistributed, and the larger, the previous medium density residential would become low density. So it's just basically a relocation of these existing uses. So on the screen here, I've just provided some numbers to show sort of what the difference is when we're talking about the actual percentages. And these are taken from the land use and population statistics table in the outline plan, which required an amendment as a result of this as well. So as you can see, the changes are quite minor. The total population would be reduced by 9 units. So there would be 6 less townhouse units as a result of this proposal, and 3 less low-density residential uses or units, and as well as a slight reconfiguration of the circulation network. So that would be roadways and laneways. That would result in a slight increase of 0.4% in the overall area of circulation network. And yeah, just to highlight too, the overall density as a result of these changes would be the same. So in both the existing and the proposed outline plan, the density would be 29 units per hectare. So now moving on to the redistricting piece. This was previously presented to council on October 8th. So I'll touch on it maybe a little bit more briefly. So the proposal is to redistrict these 2 sites from conventional neighborhood to integrated neighborhood district to facilitate the townhouse development. So one site is 0.51 hectares in size. That's the northwest site shown on the screen. And the other site is 0.29 hectares in size, and that's the northeast site. Yeah, I think we can go to the next slide. Thank you. So I've provided this table here, again, to show what the differences actually are when we're talking about, policy. So I've got the CN district and the IN district, and essentially I'm just showing the differences between these two. So I just want to highlight that both of these allow flexibility in housing form. So there isn't a difference really in the types of uses you would be seeing in those districts. The differences are, there's some setbacks are generally the same. There's a slight reduction in the rear yard setback when we're talking about the IN district. The density is calculated slightly differently. So the CN district is 1 to 4 units per lot. The IN district is 35 units per hectare. There would be a slight increase permitted in height. So from 2.5 stories to 4 stories. But usually with townhouses, we wouldn't see up to 4 stories. Typically, it would be around that sort of 2 to 3 stories. And then the minimum lot width. So this is sort of the reason for this redistricting is the request to have that reduction in lot width. So the IN district allows 4.9 meters. And then there's an additional minimum rear lane requirement for the IN district, which is why townhouses are typically more common in that district. So overall, staff considers, or administration considers these changes to be quite minor. And looking at sort of the policy analysis, when administration evaluates redistricting applications, we would look at whether an application complies with the land use bylaw, whether it aligns with the higher level plans and policies, and whether the proposed use is compatible with the surrounding context. So in our analysis, we believe this redistricting complies with the land use bylaw. It meets the intent of the IN district, which is typically we would see like newer types of development in the IN district, and townhouses as an appropriate use in that district. The minimum residential density requirement of 35 units per hectare is met. It complies with the higher level plan. Because of this concurrent outline plan amendment application, it would ensure continued alignment between the land use bylaw and the outline plan. And it's compatible with the surrounding context. So as mentioned, existing and future residential development is similar form, low and medium density. And administration feels that it would provide a better distribution of the townhouses in the neighborhood. When we're looking at, sort of the existing outline plan, this would actually sort of distribute townhouses more equally in the neighborhood. So this slide is just to provide an overview of the sort of engagement and circulation process that has occurred. So between August to September, so August 15th to September 13th, the applications were initially circulated. So both of these were circulated prior to first reading of the redistricting. It was also, it was circulated externally to different agencies, internally, and also to property owners within 100 meters. And then following the first reading, it was, there was public hearing advertisements from October 17th to November 5th. So there's 2 editions of the Beaumont News that it went to, the October 18th and 25th editions. It was also posted on the city's website, emailed again to external agencies, and mailed to adjacent landowners. So that all occurred on October 17th. And then, of course, we have the public hearing date today. And we, as mentioned, we have not received any written submissions as of yesterday at noon, which was the deadline. So administration, based on our land use servicing and policy review, recommends that following the public hearing, Council, 1, adopt the amended Dance Row Meadows outline plan by resolution. For reference, this is attachment 5 to the outline plan report found on page 47 of the council agenda. And number 2, give bylaw 1061-24 second and third reading. For reference, this is attachment 1 to the redistricting report on page 102 of the council agenda package. And this concludes my presentation. Administration is available to answer any questions from council, either now or if they would like to hear from the applicant first at the conclusion of the applicant's presentation.
Thank you very much. We'll open the ground to questions from council at this time before we go into the public hearing. So at this time, I'll begin questions with Councilor Natalibus. Nathan, you have the floor.
Perfect. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for the presentation. I just have a few questions, and I guess I'm just looking for clarity as to how we should approach this, more so on the bylaw 1061-24, if that should wait until after the public hearing presentation. But for the initial proposal there, I think we could go for readings. Am I correct in saying that? Or can I speak to everything that was presented? And I guess the question is to you, Madam Clerk.
Madam Clerk?
Thank you for the question. Sorry, could you repeat the first one with regard, sorry, you were saying the separate readings and I didn't catch the last part of that.
Absolutely. Just the initial proposal that's in place doesn't relate so much to the bylaw 1061-24, which requires the public hearing. So can I speak to the first one and not the second, or can I speak to both since they were presented together?
They're congruently
Yeah.
having the public hearing together, so you can ask to both at the same time. That's fine. It's within the same public hearing. That would be, yeah.
Perfect. Thanks so much.
Yeah, sorry.
So I guess just a first question to administration here, just looking for a little clarity. You had mentioned comments around narrower form of townhouse development. Can you describe what that means exactly?
Through the mayor to Councillor Natalibus, the applicant is proposing to develop narrower lots than the CN district allows, because the CN district allows for a minimum lot width of 6 meters. They want to develop the townhouse, which is narrower than 6 meters. That is why they have to use the IN district, which can go to a minimum of 4.9 meters. Yep. So it's from 6 to 4.9 at the minimum. Yeah.
Okay, perfect, thank you. And then I'm just trying to read through the rationale that was provided in the report from administration, but it doesn't really rationalize why this is happening. It just describes that we're converting basically one original area into two. What is the rationale behind the change?
Probably the applicant would be able to answer that question a little bit more appropriate. The purpose of this application in front of council is to redistribute the medium density, which as you saw earlier in the existing outline plan. There is a role of medium density, and they just want to redistribute the number of medium density housing to 2 parcels instead of one long parcel. So that is the reason for this application. In terms of the rationale why the developer is doing that, probably the applicant may be able to answer that better, but probably it would be the efficiency of lotting, those things. So, yeah.
Okay, perfect, thank you. And just one last question, and I'll probably ask that rationale question to the developer a bit later, but just in terms of disrupting a neighborhood that has already been somewhat predetermined, the concern that I always have, especially being a resident in an area where similar things are going on, is now there's the opportunity for a 4-story apartment to be in your backyard. When you originally purchased that land, and I realize the developer probably would have put a map out similar to what was originally presented here, with the expectation you would not have this in your backyard. So my concern for the residents is we were told one thing and now we're getting a completely different product potentially in our backyard. So I'm just, again, it comes back to that rationale. Why change it if we had original plans and the expectation would be that you don't have this apartment in your backyard? Second to that, I guess I would say, if you look at the proposed townhouse on the northeast side, to me, that's not as much of a concern because there's no houses developed there. Whereas once we have a development, what's the rationale in disrupting what we've proposed already?
So I think it is the efficient use of land will be one of the speculated reasons of why the developer is doing that. And secondly, the developer, the applicant is proposing a townhomes development as opposed to apartment building. So as Brenda was speaking during the presentation, mostly commonly the townhomes will be 2 to 3 stories, depending on how they develop nowadays. Because nowadays they don't usually have the basement, so the ground floor will be the parking, and the second and third, basically will be the living areas. So it will be maximum of 3 stories instead of 4-story apartments.
Okay, and just a last question. So administration can guarantee that it won't exceed 3 stories at any point during construction?
Probably that will be a question to the developer. Yeah.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Penrod, you have the floor. Then we'll go to the public hearing.
Thank you, Mayor Daniluk. Just a question for clarification from administration. Looking at the community insight aspect of your report, it's very clear 238 mail-out people were contacted for feedback regarding this with only 1 response. And then, yeah, so I guess my question is, how does that compare to other similar moments in other neighborhoods around the city where plans to some of Councillor Natellenbos's concerns that he expressed? How would this feedback or lack thereof compare to other neighborhoods that have undergone some similar changes?
In terms of the circulation area, it is under the land use bylaw. We usually we basically send it out to, if you see the blue lines when Brenda put it on the map, we put in 100 meters buffer. So basically all the property that are within that 100-meter buffer will get a notice from us 2 times. One is when we receive the application, we do circulate it to them. So basically tell them that the city received this application and these are the proposed changes. Do you have any comments or feedback to this application? And that is where that one resident calling Brenda to ask some questions there. And then we also send to the same property owners during the public hearing notice, because by law we have to send the public hearing notice to adjacent landowners. And for this time, we, as you know, we don't receive any people that are registering to speak. So in terms of the number of whether it is the same with other application, it depends on the nature of the application. So if I cannot say for sure what is the best percentage of response, but it depends on the nature of the applications and whether the changes are, I don't know, have the negative impact, right? So, yeah.
Fair. Would it be, well, I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Appreciate that. So no further questions from members of council, from administration. We'll move on to the public hearing. You said quick, right, this time? You said quick, not me. You did? Nathan, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. This will be quick and easy. So just a quick question in regards to the response that was received. Was it in support of or against this development?
I can speak to that. So I don't think that we got a clear whether they were against it because it wasn't a formal response. It was just a phone call. But they did have some concerns.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Appreciate that. So with that, we'll move over to the public hearing. I'll declare the public hearing open at this time. Are there anybody willing or interested in speaking in favor of the bylaw at this time? Oh, Madam Clerk?
Mayor, thank you. I just want to clarify procedure. The public hearing was open at the beginning when administration started speaking,
Oh, thank you.
and the applicant still has to speak with regards to his 10-minute presentation prior to anybody who is opposed or in favor of the proposed
Okay,
amendment.
thank you. I thought we had to, okay, no problem. We can move for that. So please join us at the table here and begin when you're ready, please. Please state your name for the record, and you have 10 minutes to present, please.
Thank you very much. My name is Rod Heinrichs. I'm a land use planner with Stantec Consulting. I'm joined by Mr. Brad Clark from Anthem Developments. If it would please council, we could go through our presentation. You may find it to be repetitive because administration did a very comprehensive job of covering all the matters and the items. So if it would please council, we can still happily provide presentation, or we can go straight to questions if that's your wish.
Why don't you do a minimum, just a quick overview, if you don't mind. Make sure you don't miss anything from the presentation, if you could, please, and then we'll open up to questions. Thank you.
We're here to speak and represent on behalf of the proposed changes to the outline plan and the rezoning before you today. The first slide here just shows an air photo of the area, and it's an undergoing development. It is obviously in the necessary stages: plan amendments, rezonings, subdivisions, as Beaumont is an attractive community and it's generating desire for housing. Next slide, please. As previously mentioned, this map shows the two areas zoned to the IN Integrated Neighborhood Zone and its relationship to the existing houses and built forms that are there and the other townhome and medium density and high density sites in the neighborhood. This slide it provides a clear demonstration of exactly what's being changed, and as touched upon before, one area of townhousing is simply being basically split in half and redistributed elsewhere in the neighborhood to provide a more balanced distribution of housing types throughout the neighborhood, as is one of the objectives of your municipal development plan. Statistically, the scope of the change is very minor. The only net change basically is a reduction of about a quarter hectare, and that is the result of some increased roadways and laneways, as the outline plan amendment does propose to show a more laned product, which again is helps to improve accessibility and walkability throughout the neighborhood and is generally a positive thing. But it accounts for the major change in land use. This map again just summarizes the zones, the current zoning in place, the CN neighborhood throughout, CN zone district throughout the neighborhood, and the IN zoning, and the two areas being sought to change from CN to IN. As touched upon earlier, these are the differences between the two zones. They allow very similar land uses. And the primary difference between the CN and IN zone is that the IN zone allows slightly more compact built form. And when developing townhouse, row house built forms, then the reduction down to a minimum lot width of 4.9 meters is helpful to facilitate that. Again, here's alignment with the current city, your city policies and plans. The zoning change, the districting change is being sought to align for the proposed built form. The outline plan is being changed in order to align the proposed zoning and built forms with the overall vision for the neighborhood. And some of the guiding principles from your own MDP, your municipal development plan, as I mentioned earlier, which touches on the desire to have a variety of housing, interesting forms of housing and neighborhoods, and distributed relatively evenly throughout the town and the city. And that's basically it.
Thank you, gentlemen, for that synopsis of the presentation. Appreciate that. With this time, open any questions, members of council, for our presenters who are in favor of the application for the change. Any questions, members of council? Councillor Barnhart, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. Just one, I think the question that was asked, the rationale for why you made the change, like what prompted that? What was the, I guess, the trigger for that?
Sure. I'll take first stab at it, and if I miss anything, then Mr. Clark will add, fill in the blanks. Essentially, it's much of the development of these neighborhoods is based on marketability. Our client is always got their nose to the radar as to what is marketable, what is selling, what the people want, and what they're seeking in built forms and housing. I think the general sense here is that rather than having a congregation, as a single lump of row housing and town housing, that it would be beneficial and more attractive and more vibrant and interesting in this area to kind of distribute those townhouses into two separate areas and create a little more variety and interest in the neighborhood, which would improve the marketability. And with the more laned product, of course, you have more opportunity for on-street parking, boulevard streets, the like. So it's generally a marketing response to consumer demand.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Talabas. Nathan, you have the floor.
I guess just a little more clarity around that. I can appreciate as a business we're looking at marketing, but our role as council is to look after existing residents as well as eventually the growth of the community. So I understand the benefits that come from the marketability side. But what's kind of a response to existing homeowners that had an expectation of what their area would look like, and now we're potentially putting up, I believe the max was 2.5 story, 3, whatever the case is, in their backyard that they weren't expecting?
Good question, Councillor. In this case, the zones are very similar in their built form and what they allow. The one difference is height. The IN district does allow more variety and more variability. I don't think there's a big concern about height in this case, in the sense that when you're building townhouses, 4 stories, again, is not a very marketable product because you've got narrower building pockets. And as those building pockets get narrower, if you go too high, you're basically filling that space with an awful lot of stairwell and staircase instead of livable space in the unit. So if it's a large apartment block or a larger assembly of land, I can see communities maybe having some concerns about a change of that nature and of that scope. But the scope of this change is relatively minor, relatively small. And planning is an iterative process, and these plans are often living documents that get tweaked and touched up as time goes on. And so in this case, I would suspect, as shown by the results from the consultation, there wasn't any concern expressed out of the 200, nearly 300 notices that were sent. No objections were raised, and so I think the expectation in this case is that the relatively low scale, small scale change is a minor change. The number of units changing is relatively small and not a concern.
Perfect. And I guess just to speak to that, I mean, I'm looking at the overview layered map here, and if there's 270 of these sent out, there's probably only 10 houses that are immediately affected by this. So in terms of low response, that I would imagine that's probably why. I didn't get the reassurance that it wouldn't go up to 4 stories. So what is the maximum height that this building would be?
Well, technically, the maximum height in the IN zone is 4 stories. But again, since townhomes are being proposed here, it's very rare to see a townhome go that high. Most townhomes are typically 2 story, 2 to 3, often 2.5 story. Again, for the reason because you're dealing with a narrower building pocket, and having too many stairwells and stairs within that confined space reduces the desirability of the housing form. So to envision a 4-story unit on a 5-meter wide townhouse would not be very marketable or desirable, and I don't think there's much concern about that.
Okay, and just last question, what negative impact would it have would it have if we were to continue on with the existing proposal and not amend it as requested?
Well, the impact would be the townhousing built form would not be able to be accommodated. And then you'd probably end up with more single detached built forms, very similar to, the only choice would be to continue under the CN district with the built forms that are there, and you'd have uniform houses and built forms throughout the entire neighborhood, and you would not get the variety and diversity of housing forms that your municipal development plan has laid out as a guiding principle.
Okay, so just, sorry, looking for clarity as to how come the original proposal cannot proceed as it was supposed to with the townhomes in that area? How come we have to move them?
Well, a portion of it is, if we look at the air photo, some of the area that was already earmarked or envisioned for row housing has been subdivided and developed already. And so this is kind of an update to the outline plan. The outline plan is basically updating the layout, the recognition of development that's occurred so far, and bringing, I guess, the vision of the neighborhood up to date for members of your community who, when they do come in here and look at the neighborhood and see what is the vision, this amendment they'll be looking at a current version rather than something that might be a little outdated.
Okay, so just for clarity, we cannot proceed as originally proposed. That is why we're requesting this change?
We as in...
As in the
council,
developer,
or-
sorry. You and your team cannot continue to build what was originally proposed. That is why we are asking for this change?
No, it's not a matter of not being able to. If council sees fit to refuse the rezoning or the plan amendment, then the only option available is to continue as the neighborhood is currently planned. We've come before you to seek the change because we think it is an improvement to the plan, it's an update to the plan, and it brings the plan into current trends and marketability.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Van Newkirk, Steve, you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you. I'm just going to re-ask maybe one of the questions that was asked already. So has the proponent decided like what is going to be built? I've heard other councillors asking that, and the reason I'm saying, like, have you decided what's built? Because that could bring clarity to the conversation here, right? Because we've talked about 2.5, we talked about 3, but we could do 4. So, have you decided what you're going to build, or is that still up for discussion? What does that look like?
Yes, our client has already initiated subdivisions in these areas, and the townhomes are the built form that are being sought as far as starting to divide the land up. Based on the street pattern and the block pattern in the outline plan that's before you today, again, you're talking about lot depths and widths that are suitable for townhouse or single detached only. The parcels that are identified in the proposal before you now are not large enough to accommodate an apartment style building or a larger built form like that.
Yeah, so have you, I guess, just very clear, are you planning on building 2.5-story, 3-story, or 4-story?
We don't have the builder plans yet. I would suspect they would come in familiar with what's already being built along Dance Row Way, but I can't actually answer what their plans are right now, but there are no 4 stories as per today.
Yeah, no, that's fair. And I just wanted to ask for ultimate clarity's sake, right? Because that's what I hear being mused about, in council here tonight is the concern. I haven't heard concern about townhouses. I haven't heard concern about, all the things you stated. It sounds to me like the concerns or questions being asked have been centered around height. So I was, merely, if there was an answer to that, it maybe would have provided clarity in the hearing. So that's what I was trying to get to here.
It's a good question. Planning and zoning rules in particular are permissive, so they describe a box that you can fill with a building, and a lot of times that box is bigger than what often is desired to be built. That's reflective of the case here, I think.
Yeah, for sure. And you know, the vision of what a townhouse is continually evolving as well, right? You know, as administration stated, some of them don't have basements, some are slab on grade with parking underneath. There's different combinations of that, and the product is getting more creative as time goes on as well. So, yeah, I'm curious to see what will come. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Seeing no further questions, thank you, gentlemen, for your presentation. Any further people willing to speak in favor of the bylaw in this evening's public hearing? Seeing none, thank you, gentlemen. You can take a seat again. We may need you again later for follow-up questions, possibly. Anybody in attendance who wants to speak against the bylaw?
I've never been to one of these before, so I don't know how to.
Okay. Madam Clerk? Sorry, did you have your hand up? Just 1 second.
Thank you, Mayor. If this person would like to come to the microphone to speak in opposition of the proposed outline amendment, then we would ask that she come to the front and make her presentation and state her name, full first name and full last name, so we can get that for the record.
Okay. Bit confusing the process, so we asked earlier, anybody wants to speak, you have to put your hand up, no one did. That's okay. If you want to speak now in opposition, you can at this point. If you speak in favor, we've already passed that part of the public hearing. Are you in opposition? Please have a seat, state your name and address, please, and we'll welcome your comments, please. When you're ready, please begin.
My name is Lorraine Trotman, address 6608 64th Avenue. My property is right on the back of this CN development that they want to do. When I first bought this property 2 years ago, it was to be single-family housing. That's why I purchased that property, was because of that reason. To have, sorry, I'm a little bit nervous.
Take your time.
To not really get any answers to these questions that council is asking is frustrating to me. They say right now there are no plans. They don't know if it's going to be 4, 3, 2.5. That kind of is upsetting to me. If you want something to change, you should know what you're changing. You should have your plans done, everything else. The other concern I have, again, is why change it now? You had everything approved before, and now you want to change it. Neighborhoods are changing, I understand, but I think if I could have complained before, I probably would have, but, you know, it's something that the neighbors talk, and it only affects so many people in that back lane. And believe it or not, majority of them are renters, so there are not very many of them that are actually homeowners. They're renters. And that's probably another reason why they didn't get a lot of concern about it. And that's a point that I need to make. And I'd sooner have single-family dwellings, because then you know what you have. And that's why everybody purchased those homes, was because of that. And I think that's it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any questions for our presenter? Councillor Barnhart.
Thank you. And first of all, you're very brave to speak out publicly about your concerns, and I appreciate that you took the time to come. Just wanted to know if it's possible for you to show us on the map where your house is, because I
I'm right in
am
the
a visual
back.
learner. I don't know if the
Yeah, I'll have to-
administration could do that. That would really...
Yeah, my back lane is, like, it's right there.
Okay, we'll try and find it here. Just
Yeah.
give us a second.
I don't know if the administration can point out where she is, or maybe you don't know either.
In
I
the
don't-
cul-de-sac, yeah.
Is it what?
It's just probably below
Just below
one.
letter one, somewhere.
It's in one.
So we'll kind of extrapolate back to previous slide,
Yeah,
and get an idea
yeah,
of which
that back lane right there, yeah, that's where I am, right there, right in the cul-de-sac part there, yeah.
I'm trying to relate it to what I have on the other map, but it's kind of difficult to go back.
Third house from the corner, yeah.
Okay.
That's why I bought it. I've been there for 2 years.
So what's changing there for you would be, instead of a whole row of townhouses, it's going to be, if I'm not mistaken, I'm really having difficulty visualizing where exactly that is.
I know the maps are horrible.
It's this one up here, right? You're looking at this one here?
Yeah, so
Yeah.
there were originally no townhouses.
I think if they go
She's
to
up
the
here.
one that's got the C and the square,
That's where the new ones go. Okay, okay, now I understand. My colleague here helped me to get my map straight, so thank you very much for explaining that.
Thank you. Councillor Telebus, you have a question?
Just two quick ones. I guess first, what originally brought you to Beaumont? What made you move to Beaumont?
I purchased another home in Beaumont about 10 years ago, and then unforeseen circumstances, I had to leave that relationship and start on my own. So I looked for a smaller lot, a little house, and I stayed in Beaumont. And I love Beaumont. And when I looked for, again, when I was looking for lots, it was the area, and I specifically asked my developer and builder what was going behind me. And I believe I also came here and asked, because I wanted to make sure. And they said it was single-family housing, and I said, thank you. And I wanted that confirmed, and I did get it confirmed at that time. So, and then that's why I purchased that lot.
Okay, perfect. And then I guess my next question is, how do you feel that this will negatively affect you or your family or your neighbors based on what you thought was originally going to go there?
For one thing, traffic in that area is already overtaken because a lot of the homes in there have 3 families living in them. Basement, main floor, and the suite on top of the base of the garage. The streets, I have to say, I apologize, are narrower. My other house in Beaumont, you could pass 2 cars, park a car, and you'd have no problem. The newer area, the city streets are a lot smaller. To accommodate people passing and walking, it's very, very hard. It's also hard to see people when they're walking because everything is so condensed. And I understand there's reasons for that, because I did talk to somebody here in the city of Beaumont about that also. And just too many people. Like when you have a single-family housing, you're going to have maybe a family of 4 or 6, or, you know, if they have an elderly person. The townhomes, you're going to have, your population is going to be a lot larger. And I'm concerned about parking and safety. Safety is another thing in the area.
Perfect. Thank you for your response. And again, I echo what Councillor Barnhart said. Thank you for having the courage to speak.
Okay.
Thanks for coming. Appreciate that. Is anybody else deemed to speak in opposition to the bylaw in the public today? Seeing none, I'll ask for the formality then. Is anybody else in the room from the public interested in speaking, deemed to be interested in this bylaw? Neither for or against. Seeing none, that concludes all of our speakers in the public hearing. So, Madam Clerk, I can declare the public hearing closed at this time. The public hearing is all closed at 8:13 this evening. We're moving on then to item 6.1, the recommendation and the report. I'll move the recommendation and council can discuss it. Madam Clerk, can you put the recommendation on the screen, please? As set out in attachment 5 of the November 5th, 2024 report, Dancero Meadows Outline Plan Amendment, non-statutory public hearing and approval be approved. I will not speak to the motion at this time. My members of council that wish to speak to the motion before us at this time. Councilor Monkoff-Swain, do you wish to speak to the motion at this time?
No, I think it's pretty clear what's being presented here. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I don't see your picture, so I want to make sure I didn't miss you in case you had your hand up. I don't have on my screen here. I just have the motion. Thank you. Councillor Telebus, you have the floor to speak regarding the motion.
Yeah, I'll speak to this motion, but I think it's difficult to speak to just the one because eventually they're all going to be tied together here. So as a whole, I will not be in support of this motion, primarily because I don't feel that we were provided with enough information for me to be able to go to existing home residents and say, hey, this is the actual plan that's in place and you won't be negatively impacted by the proposal. I just don't have enough confidence in what was provided to be able to do that. I also don't think that it is fair unless there are extenuating circumstances where a homeowner is living in an area, is promised one thing, and then a change is made for, again, reasons where I just didn't feel the rationale was truly there. So those are my reasons as to why I will not be supporting this.
Thank you, Councillor. I appreciate that. And the members of council have any comments, discussion on the motion on item 6.1 at this time? Seeing no further questions, at this point, I'll call for the vote on the motion. Will you please activate the voting sequence, please? Councilor McCaw-Swain, how do you vote?
In favor.
Thank you. That carries 4-2 in favor of the motion as presented. Thank you, Council. Moving on then to item 6.2. Madam Clerk, can you put the motion for second reading on the screen, please? Is a member of council willing to move second reading of the bylaw 1061.24 or -24? I'll move that the bylaw 1061-24 Dancero Meadows redistricting, a bylaw to amend bylaw 944-19, our zoning blueprint, land use bylaw be given second reading. Discussion on the motion, please. And sorry, I should have stated for the record, my mistake. In the previous vote, Councilor Natelebus and Councilor Penrod were in opposition. Councilors Barnhart, myself, Councilor McCaw-Swain, and Councilor Van Newkirk were in favor of the motion. Just for the record, please. I forgot to do that. Councilor Natelebus, you wish to speak on second reading?
Absolutely. Thank you, Mayor. I just want to reiterate some of the similar things I had mentioned before. I won't get into that because this is more focus on transferring of zones from CN into IN, which ultimately means that as the presenter earlier had mentioned, the developer, that you're given a certain box and you determine what you put in that box, and there's no clarity as to what's going to go into this box. All we're doing is expanding this box and potentially creating hurdles for existing residents that already live in that area. So ultimately, this is going to give developers the opportunity to put 4-story buildings in the backyard of traditional 2-story houses. So again, I will not be in support of the second and third reading.
Thank you, Councillor. I appreciate that. Other members of council wishing to speak on second reading? Councilor McCaw-Swain, I can't see you again. Do you wish to speak at this time?
No comments, thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Barnhart.
Thank you, Mayor. Don't have a prepared speech, but I guess I just want to say that one of the things that we, as a council in the past, have looked at and currently is trying to make our community open and ready to accept many different people in many different forms of housing. And I don't want to see developers being targeted as doing something that isn't in keeping with what we as council would like to see happen as well, some members of council, obviously. So I just want to say I am in support of diversity of housing, more affordable housing, welcoming people into our neighborhoods, and I don't think there's anything bad about having a 3 or 2-story house in your neighborhood. I think it can be a very welcome addition to any neighborhood. So just wanted to say that, Mayor. Just feels like I needed to say that. So
That's fine, Councillor.
I will be in favor of this motion. Thank you.
This is the debate portion. That's totally fine. Councilman Newkirk, Stephen, you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you. A lot of good discussion here tonight among council and, administration prepared. Really good report. I really liked the comparison maps that were put up tonight. I liked the comparison tables, and I just felt that was laid a good foundation for a discussion tonight. So thanks to administration for that. I do appreciate that. When I was reviewing and preparing for the meeting tonight, one of the main things I was thinking about was the comparison map that showed, one big chunk being split into 2 chunks. And I think that is what I'm ultimately in support of. I would have rather saw the proponent be clear with what's going to be built. I would have rather saw that. There will be support tonight from me for this, but in the future, I think I would like to have some more clarity in front of council around what is going to be built, because as Councillor Natelebus said, there is a possibility that a 4-story building could be built in this. So if the proponent is clearly not going to build a 4-story, then I think they need to be able to say that then with certainty. And I don't think we heard that tonight. And I asked a pretty clear question on that. So, that's what I would prefer, council. And I'm speaking to council, in this statement here tonight. So, further to the comments from Councillor Barnhart, which I really appreciate, different types of people in different parts of life and different times in life being able to access housing. One of the pieces around access to parking has been a continual, issue for me, I guess, in the community. And these lots in this area it was going to be tight before, and it's going to be tight still. This decision in my mind doesn't change that. It was going to be tight on the streets, and it was going to be tough to park before. And even though this is split into 2 pieces and distributed, that still doesn't change. That's just kind of what this area is, and that's how it's organized. So, so tonight I will support this. But for those watching and listening, it's, in the future I would like to see a little bit more clarity with what's going to be built. So, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Penrod, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor Daniluk. I'll just say I came in tonight into the public hearings, not really seeing any reason to vote against what was proposed, but we come to the public hearings with an open mind, and this is exactly why we have the public hearings. We had a resident who spoke passionately, who did her due diligence to try to do to the best of her ability, determine what would be behind. I think I would put a call out to the entire development and building community, just to ask for some real accountability, to say, like, if you can't guarantee what's going to be there, then don't make promises that you can't keep. I can't weigh in on what was or wasn't promised in this case, but I take seriously what the resident had to say here tonight. And I guess back to my earlier comments around the engagement that we do, one scenario for why we're not getting a lot of people responding to the engagement would be to interpret that as, say, well, a lack of response means consent. However, I do wonder, if the same scenario plays out over and over again, where folks come forward with concerns and they feel like the result is kind of a fait accompli before the public hearing happens, and council's just going to go ahead with whatever has been proposed by developers and or recommended by administration, then eventually why would you speak up if you feel like whatever you say is not going to be taken into account in the end? So that's a situation that I would like to avoid. So again, I'll commend our resident for bravely speaking up tonight. Thank you, council, for weighing in and saying what you said. I find it difficult now contemplating this vote, where I'll come down, because fundamentally I do see these situations as a need for us to balance the rights of property owners. So I've spoken a lot about our residents who's here tonight, but it remains to be said that the developers and the builders are also landowners and have a certain amount of rights here too, and they've followed all of the procedures that are expected of them. And so I think as we're trying to make these plans, and to Councillor Barnhart's point, to make our community welcoming to folks of all different ages and stages of life, and offer those mixed types of housings to make our communities diverse. I've said all along that diversity is a a core value of our community, and it's a sign of inherent strength in our community, so we want to promote it wherever we can. I think I'll stop there. Those are just the pieces. I feel like it's important to have a rationale for out there as far as why we're voting the way we were voting tonight. So thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you. Councillor Telebas, one more comment, and then I'll make a comment, and we'll go to the vote.
Perfect.
You have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. I think it is important to note, absolutely, diversifying the types of houses we have and which ultimately diversifies the population we have. I 100% support that. But when you start to interrupt the lives of existing residents and it alters their way of life and their expectation of their life and what they expected would be their residential area, that's when I get concerned. So if this was a brand new development, and as I mentioned, if you're looking at site proposal number 2 and we were to approach it this way where there's next to no houses in that area, 100%, this is the approach we take, and this would be the most respectful approach to take, in my opinion. So again, support the diversified housing, and obviously the population and the individuals that it brings in and the affordability, but I don't support interrupting existing proposed lifestyles that were promised to folks who bought houses already. So, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I appreciate that. Seeing no further comments, I'll make one last comment, then we'll go to the vote. I do appreciate all the comments this evening, proponents for and against, as well as Councillor Barnhart and Councillor Van Nucker's comments. I'm in favor of the bylaws, so I will, at this point, I'll call for the vote. Please activate the voting system. And Council, would you please vote accordingly on the motion before you on second reading? Councillor Monkoff-Swain, how do you vote?
In favor?
Thank you. Councillor Barnhart? I'm sorry, no, I didn't, it's not registering on my screen here. I see now.
Did I vote twice now?
No. That motion carries 5-1 in favor. Councillor Telebas in opposition. Thank you, Council. At this point, move on to motion for third reading. I'll move that bylaw 1061-24 be given the third reading. Discussion on the motion. Oh, Councillor Telebas.
I guess I just want to make one more comment. Obviously, we're debating the same topic here, but before it's ultimately pushed through, I would just ask that all council members potentially think of their own backyard and having something and an expectation, and you bring your family to this community, and then plans completely change, and there's potentially a 4-story, because we haven't heard otherwise, 4-story building in your backyard staring down at your backyard and your family. So I'm not saying 100% that's what the instance is here, or that's what's going to happen, but the fact that there's the lack of that information and we haven't been reassured that something different is going there. We've been said it's likely going to be like this, or it could be like this, but no reassurance. I would just like every individual to put yourselves in the shoes of a homeowner who is being disrupted like this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Penrod, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor Daniluk.
You're welcome.
I'll just say in reply, our words matter, and I think it's really important that we not characterize what's happened here tonight as anything being pushed through. There's a significant process that's laid out. That process has been followed to the T. Folks have had the opportunity at every turn to have their voices heard. We come tonight to have to make a decision, and that decision will be made. But due diligence has been taken all the way along, and everyone's had the opportunity to make their point and have it heard and considered duly. So I just wanted to clarify that piece.
Thank you, Councillor. With that, seeing no further comments, members of Council. Council, I'll ask you to vote. Would you please initiate the voting process? Councillor Monkoff-Swain, how do you vote on third reading?
In favor?
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor, that motion carries 5-1 in favor. Councillor Telebas in opposition. Thank you. We are at SES.
Mayor? If I may.
Sorry, Madam Clerk, you wanted to say something after third reading. I apologize. Go ahead, please.
Thank you. We do have external presenters that are here this evening, and we were wondering if it's okay if we could do the closed session after we come back from the break. We do not have, it appears, anyone to speak with regards to the Municipal Development Plan public hearing. So if council's okay with deferring that item to later in the agenda and going into closed session.
Sure. We'll come back at 7:40 to start with our closed session. When closed session is over, we'll come back to open session and do item 6.3, bylaw 1054-24, in open session after our closed session. See you at 7:40. Thank you.
It said 8:31, it was 7:31.
Did I?
The table say 8.
Okay, someone's got to fix that clock. Let's just delegate that to somebody. I know I can't delegate things, but somebody fix the clock.
Do you want to stand on my shoulders or do I stand on yours?
You guys can figure it out. We're live now. Thank you very much. We're live back after our break, and our first order of business is to go into closed session. We had to rearrange our agenda to accommodate our presenters, which I'm very happy to do. And so I'll look for the motion on the screen. I'll move that council move into closed session at 7:42 p.m. pursuant to the Freedom of Information and Property Protection of Privacy Act, Sections 16, 17, and 25. Discussion on the motion? Seeing none, council, would you please initiate the voting process, please? And we'll vote on moving into closed session. That carries unanimously. 5-0 in favor of closed. Live feed is finished. Okay. Ms. Raymond will? Okay, that's great. We're live? Good evening. We are live back again from our closed session. No minutes is coming from that session. We will now begin back to our agenda. Item 6.3, bylaw 1059-24, Municipal Development Plan, amending bylaw, public hearing, second and third readings. I believe Ms. Raymond will be presenting the item this evening. And we'll present, then I'll declare the public hearing open, and we'll begin the public hearing process. Public hearing is open now. All right, the public hearing is now open. And Ms. Raymond, would you please, when you're ready, please, you can present the item, bylaw 1059-24, please, whenever you're ready to start. Oh, hang on. Let me show you the microphone for you there. Just hit the, I'm not sure where you're sitting there. Hang on.
Thank you, Mayor. It's on now.
Thank you.
Good evening, Your Worship and members of Council. My name is Kendra Raymond, Director of Planning and Development. I am bringing bylaw 1059-24, our Complete Community Municipal Development Plan amending bylaw, this evening for public hearing and for second and third readings. The purpose of this bylaw is to align Beaumont's Municipal Development Plan with the Edmonton Metropolitan Region Board Regional Agricultural Master Plan that was approved by the Government of Alberta in late 2022. The RAMP requires members of the EMRB to complete a regional context statement within 1 year and update the MDP within 2 years of the approval of RAMP by the government. In addition, RAMP requires municipalities who have lands that are within Policy Area 4 Urban Agriculture, of which Beaumont is one, to prepare an urban agriculture plan and submit to EMRB for review and comment. Administration completed the urban agriculture plan as well as a context statement in November 2023. The regional context statement identified 3 areas that our MDP needed to be updated to be consistent with the EMRB RAMP. These were mainly mapping updates that we were required to Section 13. So we had to update our maps to include our lands that are classified as Policy Area 3 Agriculture in future transition lands and Policy Area 4 Urban Agriculture. We also had to include our prime agriculture areas that fall within this policy area. And then finally, we had to update one action list item to include Beaumont's Urban Agriculture Plan. Bylaw 1059-24 received first reading by Council on September 11th, 2024. Following first reading, administration sent the amendment package to EMRB for their review and approval through the Regional Evaluation Framework process. On October 4th, 2024, EMRB administration recommended approval of Beaumont's MDP Amendment REF application. In accordance with EMRB's REF administrative procedures, no appeal was received by the end of the 28-day appeal period, which ended at 4:30 p.m. on November 1st, 2024, and I'm pleased to say as a result that the REF application was officially approved. Administration recommends, following the closure of the public hearing, the approval of second and third readings of Bylaw 1059-24, our Complete Community Municipal Development Plan amending bylaw, as it complies with all higher-level plans and policies, including the EMRB Growth Plan and the Regional Agriculture Master Plan, and it will continue to guide the future growth of Beaumont to achieve the vision and goals of the community. This concludes my presentation, and administration is open for questions and discussion from council. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Raymond. Appreciate that. Any questions, members of council, for Ms. Raymond's presentation on item 6.3? Before I move to the public hearing portion and people willing to speak in favor. See no questions from any members of council at this point? Okay, we're in the public hearing, and I see nobody from the public here to speak to it in person, but I will ask anybody willing to speak in favor of the bylaw. Seeing none, anybody from the public here to speak against the bylaw? Seeing none, anybody here in public deem themselves to be affected and want to wish to speak to the bylaw either way? Seeing none, I declare the public hearing closed at 8:24 p.m. That clock's going to get changed. He's pretty close. He's probably pretty close to it. All right, the public hearing is now closed. At this point, I will move second reading for our Complete Community Municipal Development Plan amending. Any members of council wishing to speak to the motion of second reading on the bylaw as presented by administration? Seeing none? All right, I'll call for the vote. Would you please initiate the voting process? Council, please vote accordingly, and that carries 5-0 in favor of second reading. Is a member of council willing to move third reading of the bylaw? Councillor Van Newkirk.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll move the bylaw 1059-24, our Complete Community Municipal Development Plan amending bylaw be given third reading. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Discussion on the motion for third reading? Seeing none, would you please initiate the voting process for third reading? And that motion carries unanimously, 5-0 in favor of third reading. Thank you, Council. Thank you, Mr. Raymond, for the present requirements this evening. Seeing none, we'll move on then. Thank you, Council, to item 8. CAU update. Ms. O'Neill, are you able to speak in Mr. Schwartz's absence? Mic's on.
Yes. Good evening, Council. Tonight I have 3 brief updates for you on behalf of CEO Schwartz. First, the city is pleased to be a sponsor of the Grand Slam of Curling. The Canadian Open is this week at the Silent Ice Centre in Leduc. We expect this to be a high visibility opportunity for Beaumont and Beaumont businesses. So we put out a call to the local business community to partner in the promotion, and several businesses are offering discounts to players and people who show proof of attendance at the Open. Should be fun. The second update, again this year the city will be hosting a remembrance. Starts promptly at 10:30 a.m. Did I say p.m.? I meant a.m. if I said p.m. And finally, transit. We have another month of continued growth in transit ridership, our highest month ever at over 4,100 rides. We are on track to surpass our pre-COVID transit annual ridership numbers. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. O'Neill, for doing that on behalf of CEO Schwartz. Appreciate that. Next on our agenda, Ms. O'Neill. Next on our agenda is notices of motion. Are there any notices of motion from members of council this evening to be made? Councillor Penrod, you have the floor. Oh, hang on. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. At the November 25 administration prepare a report on the feasibility cost, pros and cons, and any other considerations, including a list of other local government organizations for Beaumont becoming and holding a certified living wage employer status.
Thank you, Councillor. And any further notice in the motion this evening? Sorry, is there a change there we have to change? Something? Okay.
Yeah, thank
good
you.
with that?
Yep, I'm good
you.
with that. And then I think we have one more.
Okay.
Thank you. At the November 12th, 2024 regular council meeting, I will move that administration prepare a report by Q2 2025 with recommendations for improvements to Beaumont's property tax assessment, collection, recovery, and relief policies, including Council Policy C50 and Bylaw 980-20. The report should evaluate the pros and cons of allowing one-time tax penalty forgiveness up to a specific amount for property owners who enroll in and maintain good standing in the tax installments plan, TIP, for a defined period.
Thank you, Councillor. Any further notice on the motion this evening, any members of the council? Our next item is adjournment. We are adjourned at 8:29 p.m. Thank you for coming. Enjoy your evening. We are adjourned.